Hello, I'm Rashi, and I'm going to give a short review on the book Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Lori is an American psychotherapist, and she gives a dual perspective of what a therapist thinks of their patients as well as what a patient thinks during the therapy. This is because after a personal crisis, she finds herself seeking therapy too. Now you might be thinking, a therapist seeking therapy? Aren't they supposed to have all the answers and have their life all sorted? Well, I thought that too. And as I read the book, it made me gain a better understanding of what happens behind the scenes in therapy and what really is therapy all about. It made me ask questions like what truly happens behind the closed doors of therapy? What do therapists really think about their patients? Why do we want therapists to give us all the answers? And finally, the big one, what does better even mean in therapy? If you're curious about these questions and want to know how the author explores them in the book, do check out the book. But also, if you want a detailed review, you can check out the blog in the description. Now, moving on to the characters of the book. Of course, Lori is the author herself, and the other patients she used in a very anonymous way. She does not use the right exact name, and she has the stories mingled up a bit. They are written in a way that's very intentional and relatable in many ways, of course thought-provoking as well. So she seeks therapy from Wendell, her therapist, who has a very thoughtful approach, helps her confront her vulnerabilities, especially about health anxiety. And then there are her patients, Julie, Rita, Charlotte, and John, who was my personal favorite. So why do people seek therapy? Why do these patients come to Lori, and why did Lori herself go to Wendell? Well, she explains that initially a lot of people might come to understand the intention and behavior of someone else. Why did they do this to me? But the role of the therapist is to shift this focus from someone else to inward. They help them self-reflect on their own behavior and their actions and let them feel a bit more unstuck in the place. Self-discovery also means that you let go of a lot of narratives that you tell yourself. So it also includes unlearning a lot of things that you tell about yourself to you. And as Lori highlights, we all carry old narratives that hold us back, and part of the healing process is creating space for growth and new perspectives. How do therapists make it happen? Well, the first step comes through rapport building. Therapists begin by creating a safe space where patients feel safe and trusted, heard, and understood. This trust building phase is crucial for uncovering deeper insights and helping them make solutions for themselves in the later stage of therapy. Second step is through patients from both sides. Patients of both the client and the therapist is very important and vital in this process. It's often understood that a therapist has to be well equipped with patience, trust building, and being non judgmental, letting go of their own biases, and yet helping the patient come to the solutions by themselves. But what is not understood often is that a majority of the work of therapy is of that of the patient themselves. And they'll have to confront their uncomfortable feelings, their vulnerabilities, and that's going to take time. That's going to take a lot of work. And how does that happen? It comes with the third step, by helping the patient reclaim their independence. Often patients ask for advice, yet they resent it. So, what the therapist helps them with is they help them confront their unresolved grief, their insecurities, their vulnerabilities, past losses, and limiting beliefs they tell themselves. They, instead of offering the advice, they guide them to make decisions independently and reclaim the agency in their life. So, what can go wrong in therapy? Well, one of the first things that she highlights is that of premature exit or flight to health. What this phenomenon means is that often patients during the break think that, oh, I feel fine during the break, I must be done with the therapy and I do not need it anymore. But she explains that it is during this time, when the initial crisis has passed and the survival reactive mode is no longer present, that the patients are free to explore their unconfronted emotions and unresolved grief and address their insecurities, because now they are more open to engage with themselves and gain a better understanding on a deeper level, right? And yet it is during this time that patients may exit. The second phenomenon that she highlights is that of avoidance and self-preservation. The therapeutic process often comes up with very uncomfortable feelings and some of the most vulnerable topics that we might not have even talked about to any one of our friends, right? And this might lead the patient to feel a bit of self-consciousness, and they might want to present themselves in a way that is very polished, and they might look more put together than they actually are. So this self-preservation is kind of problematic in the initial stages, but it's important that you show yourself, or the patient show themselves, the most true and real face of themselves. And Gottlieb describes the phenomenon of doorknob disclosures, where sometimes even the most significant and important discussions are left to the end in a way to avoid the difficult conversation. But the third thing that could also go wrong is that of misaligned expectations. The patient might want to look the best and want themselves to be liked by the therapist. And yet, Gottlieb notes that therapists don't need to like their patients in order for the therapy to be effective, right? All they need to do is to make an environment which is warm, which is non-judgmental, and free of criticism. So patients don't fear rejection at all. Wendell explains the concept of emotions avoidance, and he explains that often individuals mask their own difficult truths that they are not ready to accept through distractions, different defense mechanisms, and denial. And over the frame of the book, you'll see that there are different defense mechanisms covered. And while these emotions can be avoided to provide short-term temporary relief, they do not serve well in the long term. And the power that these emotions have over us intensifies over the time. A common barrier to change is often the limiting beliefs that we tell ourselves. It may even be that an individual label themselves as cowardly instead of reflecting on the social anxiety that they have, confronting that, recognizing that, and also deflecting from the insecurity, self-consciousness that they feel with humor. So, while these narratives may offer temporary relief, they often guarantee our own unhappiness, because we are telling ourselves or criticizing ourselves. So, what the therapist does is they read between the lines and they help us understand the stories that we have been telling ourselves is limiting our own potential. And what she explains is that recognizing the need for change is just the first step. Transformation of this behavior, of a particular behavior, will require a lot of work, and that work is going to require some sort of sacrifice, some sort of loss, and letting go of harmful beliefs, outdated habits, and familiar defenses that we all have. So, in this case, it can be painful, it can be uncomfortable, which is why often people resist change when they acknowledge its necessity. And as Lori puts it, sometimes the hell is us. We often create our own difficulties, and the fear of stepping into the unfamiliar keeps us rooted in these patterns. And finally, the change is made harder by distorted self-perception. During the moments of stress, we often think that I can handle it all myself, and I must get through these. And we often see these YouTube videos and influencers saying that you don't need a therapist, it's for the weak. But it's also important, and Lori explains that how it's very different. And sometimes we are not the best person to talk to about ourselves, especially in times of crisis. She explains this through explaining the difference between self-blame and self-responsibility. So both of them have very different impact. While self-blame paralyzes us and traps us in a cycle of negativity. I'm just not good enough. I'm just not supposed to do this. But self-responsibility helps us take the accountability. They helps shift the focus from the individual to the action that they can take. See, for example, I see I've made mistakes, but I want to do it better by this. I can do it better by this, and I can change them. This shift from judging oneself to understanding oneself is also essential, and sometimes we may not be able to do it right then and there because of the crisis has just passed on us, and it's easy to doubt ourselves. So therapists, with the safe environment that they provide us, help us acknowledge those changes that we need to make. Now, what is the outcome of therapy? All that talk, all that discomfort, all that work, what does better even mean? So, all in all, the idea of better in therapy is not some flawless state that you'll be able to do anything, you'll have the answers to everything, life all sorted. It's going to be messy and it's going to be chaotic, and it's still going to be real. It's still going to be your life. And citing John Weekland in the book, she highlights that before successful therapy, it's same thing over and over. After successful therapy, it's one damn thing after another. Life's challenges don't disappear, but therapy transforms how you see them, and how you approach them and navigate them. They don't provide answers, but serve as mirrors. And this is a quote that I really like from the book, that we are the mirrors reflecting mirrors showing one another what we can't see yet. Maybe all we needed was a mutual reflection. Maybe all we needed was to talk to someone, and therapists helped us see what we can't yet see, creating insights that help us see our blind spots. Maybe it isn't about providing all the answers, it's about holding a metaphorical mirror so that we can discover our own truths. What I really loved about the book is that Lori's writing is in a way that helps you see the intimate glimpses of therapy, and at times I felt like I myself was sitting in the therapy room. Her writing is very intentional in a way that you see each character in you in a way, and well, all of her stories, all of her characters had a great arc, especially if you see her writing and background. She was initially a medical drama writer, and then she switched careers to joining a medical school in her late 30s, and then she adopted a child on her own. So she has her own timeline, and she had the courage to take on these challenges by herself. And while we see that she has that bravery and intentional approach in everything that she does, we also see that she's purely human, and therapists are purely human as well. Even when they see we see that they can seek therapy as well, and she makes the same mistakes as her patients does, wanting to look good in front of their therapist, hiding and polishing mistakes, and blaming someone else for their mistake, blaming someone else to shift the focus on them. And well, she's human as well. So I really like the fact that that segment has also been included in the book, and well, I love the book. I would 10 on 10 recommend it. If you're curious about therapy, about human behavior and resilience, I consider this book's for you. What do you think of Lori's take on therapy? Do let me know in the comments. Bye bye.